Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and MBs, let's get started. She says China is not afraid as Beijing hits U.S. with 125% tariff. Let's get it started. Let's get it twisted. Lots to talk about today. China on the come up. China on the rise. You already know what it is. You already know you already know what it's about. Okay. What's that one song called? The Does anyone have? Do you know what I'm singing? Woman Jean. Yes, that's the one. Thank you, chatter. You immediately nailed it. I think I did a good job with that. Okay, I think I did a good job with that. All right, you feel me? You feel me? Here.
我们今生注定是沧桑，苦之来要笑着走过呀，朋友啊，让我们一起牢牢铭记呀，我们今生兄弟情一场。我们今生注定是沧桑。
Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna play that a lot today. Just so you know, I'll probably play that a decent amount today. Leave the singing to the video, Bro, I don't even know what he's saying. He's saying like crying when we came, we must walk with smiles. Our lives are destined to be full of, what is it? Vicissitudes or something? I don't even know what that word means. But it's just like, I don't know what the hell he's saying, but Unk is just going crazy with it. Unk has smoked so many bogues, like you can hear it in his voice after feeling sad. As a Chinese, always dies of cringe every time I listen to the song randomly on your stream, law. Why? Also, as a Chinese, you should know that there have been numerous different pro-China phases at the Hasanabi broadcast. Back in the day, it was before it was Red Sun in the Sky. It was what was it? The I think it's like from Taiwan actually. The famous the other famous song that is like the intro song to a TV show. Oh yeah, Shu Hao Piao Piao. Shu Hao Piao Bei Long Fa. Yeah. That's the one. Iecha is not Chinese, brother. It's freaking North Korean. That's crazy. Hasan is also Chinese and he doesn't cringe. Checkmate. Exactly. I'm white Chinese, man. I'm white Chinese. You already know this. Yeah, I was so there's always been a different Chinese song, like a Mandarin song that I sing throughout various different phases of this broadcast over the course of the past like 6 years. So Brother How was the original? Oh yeah, I mean this is a totally separate. This is something different. This is something different. Wait, what is happening with this fucking thing? Bro, Brother How was so this man was so ahead of the curve. Like, think about it, dude. Think about how ahead of the game he was. This video is from like 2012. This guy didn't even see the one belt, one road. He was just like, I will be the belt. I will be the road. You know what I mean? Like he was like, I can't wait for Chinese liberation. I can't wait for Chinese prosperity. I can't wait. It's crazy. He was the belt. I think they saw him and were like, we gotta connect. we gotta connect with Africa. Okay, all jokes aside, obviously, Maoist thought, Mao Zedong thought Maoism not only is perfectly applicable in African nations, but also was very popular at the time. But you know, there's a period of when it kind of went away a little bit, and this guy brought it back, I think. So he was the belt and the road. It sounds like you would sing this in the shower for a couple of minutes until the shampoo bottle scares you out of it. Just remember, BNR Belt and Road, not one belt, one road. It's both, by the way. I know people correct me, but like you can say Belt and Road, or you can say one belt, one road. It's not. Someone corrected me on that before, but like I think initially it was called one belt, one road. Yeah, it's a direct translation. I feel like, I don't know why, I feel like he's Black Brace Belden. Like he is. I don't know where he's from. Someone in the chat said Nigerian, but like he is the Brace Belden. He was just locked in. Anyway, record this yourself and send it as your audition tape. Yeah. Yeah, one Belden, one road. Brace for the one Belden. All right. This is what you're looking for. What this? Classic. Have you listened to the Tronon episode in Chinese? Yeah, I got annoyed that they actually straight up posted it in Mandarin in its entirety. That was hella annoying because I thought it was just a meme. I thought the episode was going to be just a meme and like the beginning was going to be in Mandarin. They were going to be like, haha, just kidding. Like, nope. They did the whole thing. They did an entire podcast for like 2 hours and then they put it through the AI Mandarin translation app and made it entirely in Mandarin. It's worse than the last time when they did the pro-Israel bit. It was an old ep, I think. Yeah, last year, I think it was their April Fool's episode last year was when they were going to talk about, you know, how they're actually technically pro-Israel or something, or hear from the Israeli side, and it's just crying noises the entire time. At least I knew that was not... At least I knew to click away from that one. But the Mandarin one, I was just like, was scrolling through and I'm like, is it going to change? Or is it just going to be Mandarin the entire time? What the fuck is happening? They did an AOC interview. Oh, I didn't even know that one. I didn't even see that one. Pro-Israel bit. Are you sure about that? Yes, I'm sure about that. Anyway, all memes aside, let's get back to the serious stuff. All right. Trade standoff, trade war, tariff standoff. China digs in. Let's take a look.
Digging in. Americans are waking up to a whole new escalation in the global trade war. Beijing is hiking its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods today from 84% to 125%. And for the first time since this all started, we're actually hearing from the Chinese President Xi Jinping himself. Xi's saying that his nation is, quote unquote, not afraid, and also warning, quote, there are no winners in a trade war, and going against the world will only lead to self-isolation. This after President Trump raised tariffs on Chinese goods even higher, 145% now, as we're all trying to keep track. The White House says they're waiting for China to pick up the phone. China.
We're so dumb. We're so stupid. I'm sorry. There will come a point where the bottom will fall out of this. And I think Americans will come to the cold, hard realization, like getting slapped in the face with some very cold water to hopefully shake you out of this stupor, that we don't have the motion that we think we fucking have when it comes to global trade, at least. Like, I've been saying this for so long. I've been saying this nonstop. And I'm telling you right now, like, I think given the Chinese track record, Xi will most likely extend a helping hand at a certain point. Given their track record, given what they always do, given the restraint that they demonstrate with regular frequency, I suspect that China will bail us out again. Okay? And I don't mean just like in the 2008 style situation, because they want stability. They want stability. They want the regular business as usual politics to continue so they can continue along their journey of development. And it's very frustrating. It is very, very frustrating that America is trying to fuck up the world in this incredibly and moving into this unsustainable place with no discernible, tangible policy goals attached to it. It is a real, I'm fucking up global trade because I'm bored moment from the Trump administration. I'm telling you right now, I know, I've read the tea leaves. I'm telling you, I know what their actual stated goals are. I know what the marketing of said goals look like. I know what they're trying to do. I know what the American trade agenda is and has been. And yet, I recognize how disordered this is. I do agree China will probably budge first, but I don't know. Trump and Xi's relationship is very inconsistent and confusing. I don't think that this is about the personal relationship between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. I think this is about stability and what China wants. We often ascribe our own personal ambition and motivations and project that upon our enemies, China being the enemy in this conversation. They are not in the business, at least at this stage, they're not in the business of global dominance. So you're making the prediction that China blinks first. I don't think it's even a blinking situation. I think it will, at this point, given the runway that China has, both due to its own internal governance, due to the fact that it's a command economy, due to the fact that it has so much manufacturing power, there is no blinking first. If China wanted to fucking here's what a country that would actually want to dominate the globe would do in this circumstance. I'm Chinese. Okay? Let's say I'm Chinese. What do I do in this situation? Okay? I'm one of Xi Jinping's advisors. I'm one of those guys that's like, I don't want stability, okay? I want to destroy America. I want to destroy the dollar. You know what I would do? I would go to all of our fucking trading partners, all of the Asian trading partners, the European trading partners, set up trade deals. Tell them we will actually not flood your marketplace with our goods that are going to wipe out your own domestic economies. We're going to play ball with you, but on the one condition that you just fucking short the American dollar to the best of your ability. Just at a moment where the American reserves are at its weakest, where confidence is diminished in the dollar, we will now move in the direction of de-dollarization. They're not doing that. They're not doing that. There's a lot of foreign debt. Like a lot of foreign nations, Japan, China, many of these countries own a lot of the American foreign debt. You could just forcibly claw that away from the United States of America because China, unlike the United States of America right now, has more industrial stability. Like China and the yuan could technically become the global trade currency. It's not something that is in their interest overall. But if they wanted to dominate the globe, they could do that. This is a great opportunity for them. Just like it was a great opportunity for them to forcibly take Taiwan if they wanted to do so when America was too busy dealing with Israel and dealing with Ukraine and Israel at the same time. But they didn't do that. Why didn't they do that? Why didn't they do that? Because perhaps they're a lot more restrained and a lot more focused on the future than we are, that they don't want to fucking rock the boat. So this is precisely the reason why I don't think that they're going to do any of those things. This is precisely the reason why I think they're going to inevitably offer a lending hand. They're going to extend a hand of help to the United States of America, even though America's fucking up global trade on its own right now. America is doing an own goal. And don't tell me what Asman is saying. Asman is saying China started this war because they steal and copy products. Stop. Stop. We're talking about people who are adults, who are fucking PhDs and famous economists who are dropping the ball and failing to comprehend what is actually happening, what is actually unfolding in front of their eyes. And you're fucking telling me about Asmongold? What the fuck does he know about global trade? Shut up. The knowledgeable people are also oblivious to what is happening in front of their fucking eyes. And you're telling me about like a dude with cockroaches that fucking roll over him. Who cares what his fucking take is on this? Are you kidding me? He's just repeating whatever the fuck Republicans are saying, okay? And they know even less. What are you talking about? Like if there was a tier list of people who are fucking oblivious to what the fuck is going on here, I think Asmongold wouldn't be too high up there, especially because the Republicans that he is channeling and repeating the talking points of are also fucking oblivious. Anyway, with the way bond yields have already risen drastically, if all the foreign bondholders mass sold it, it would cause yields to skyrocket and America would default on their debts to the American bondholders. That's what I'm saying. I feel like, look, I'm not an economist and I'm not the most knowledgeable on this stuff. It is a little confusing to me, for sure. But I do feel like if there was an opportunity to destabilize the United States of America, this would be the very opportunity to do so. All you need is a couple, maybe like Japan, or at least a couple trade partners that hold a lot of American treasuries to just force America to default on their debt. Something that hasn't ever happened because it is the globe. It can't happen because the entire global trade is on the American dollar. It is the most stable thing that you can buy into. And I think that that would create so much instability that obviously China doesn't want that. And it's crazy because like in some ways, I think Donald Trump is basically forcing China's hand to play ball by unironically nuking itself. Because if America nukes itself and the entire global trade system collapses, we're fucked. Everyone is fucked. China is fucked as well. They're less fucked than America, but everyone is fucked. So It's the Nixonian madman theory in action, but instead of saying we're going to nuke our enemies, Donald Trump is literally about to press the nuclear button to nuke America. Do you see what I'm saying? It is unironically the Shane Gillis clip. Like, that is Donald Trump's madman theory, is just putting a gun to his mouth and going, oh, I'll pull the fucking trigger. I'll pull it. Yeah, if no one wants to purchase the US dollar, if no one has confidence in the US dollar, which is the currency that global trade is done on, that means it's fucking over, okay? The American hegemony has perished, and has perished in a much shorter timeline than a country like China would want. I'm deporting myself to Mexico. There is nowhere. The irony is you can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere. If the dollar collapses, right? If the dollar collapsed tomorrow, there is nowhere that you can go to. Like, nowhere is safe. America is the world. This is what I always stress to people, where it's like, people will be like, Hasan, have you ever thought about leaving America and going somewhere? And I'm like, going where? There is nowhere I can go to. You know what I mean? There's not really anywhere I can go that is outside of the sphere of influence of empire, except maybe like China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran. But even then, if global trade collapses in its entirety, even those places are not fucking safe either. There's just nothing. There's instability all around. How would they benefit from by America being around longer? Easy. The current existing global trade scheme that the United States of America has designed, where we exploit the global south for basically slave wages, and in exchange for just a paper IOU that we give them that we can print permanently, everybody gets to, or not everybody, but China at least gets to develop. Okay. And that's kind of the problem here, because out of all of these countries that we have exploited through this exact same scheme, China is the only one that has been able to develop and become a competitive power. If you follow the World Trade Organization or any number of different like geopolitical experts that talk about the global economy, that are neoliberals themselves or love capitalism, and they constantly talk about how bountiful capitalism has been for the third world, this is unironically what they are technically pointing to. China, in the ways that it has developed itself over the course of multiple decades through foreign capital coming in and then engaging in like even distribution of said foreign capital, has been able to do the thing that these guys claim other countries are doing. But if they do the thing that these guys always say, which is global capitalism has uplifted the entire planet and taken them out of poverty, it's a wonderful thing. If all of these countries had actually done that, America would collapse. This is the reality. And the only reason why China's been able to do it is because China does have a long-term stability vision. Do people not understand the sheer scale of American consumption? Nowhere is capable of instantly filling that void if our economy collapses. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about the entire global trade system collapsing, not just because the American consumption engine has fallen apart, but also because the dollar is no longer sustainable. Everything you know, everything that you think of is everything you know, and everything that you think of revolves around like one singular global reserve currency being the currency that has the most stability that everyone can do trade over. It's backed by not just the American assets, which there's plenty of, but it's also backed by 800 military bases around the planet. This is the entire game. It would cause, it would basically cause a global reset. Bitcoin not, right? Yeah, I love people that say Bitcoin because they think that the energy grids that Bitcoin needs would be running. Yeah, dude, Bitcoin, for sure. Bitcoin will save us. The only way Bitcoin would save us is if China owned all the Bitcoin, okay, and controlled it. And then we could instantly switch over to Bitcoin as the global currency somehow. It just wouldn't happen. Anyway, let's continue.
It says essentially the same thing about the United States. This very clearly showing what a tit for tat looks like, sending markets tumbling Thursday. But President Trump still optimistic when meeting with his.
USA is 30% of our consumption. 30% of consumption, top 10% of incomes is over 50% of our local consumption. If prices rise, it would only affect the lower 90% in the US. This roughly translates to 15% globally. I think we're overestimating our worth. I think you're misunderstanding. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something entirely different than our consumption engine. I think our consumption power is significant for global trade. In terms of our relationship with China, it's not negligible, but it's negligible enough for China to basically weather the storm. But that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about what could potentially happen if another world power that has the capability of becoming the global reserve currency, which I don't even think China has at this point, or at least has the appetite to become that at this point, because that would require too much foreign intervention, way more than I think what China would choose to do at this stage. It would completely collapse at this stage. If the dollar collapsed and it started defaulting, all of a sudden the entire system is broken. It is the very nature of the dollar's inability to collapse that makes it the global reserve currency in which trade is conducted on. I'm talking about the entire system collapsing, which is crazy because I think Donald Trump, as stupid as he is, kind of understands that reality, which is why he's just basically fucking forcing all of these vassal states to do this double tithing system where not only have we benefited from offering IOUs to other countries with a profound dollar purchasing power where we don't have to do the manufacturing, we just get to, take over the benefits. But then also on top of that, now you have to pay us for the privilege of us dominating the fucking entire planet with our global reserve currency status, while simultaneously you have to pay us for that privilege. And there's not really anything you can do about it because if it falls apart, then everything falls apart. Yeah, it's a real have you said thank you once type situation to the rest of the planet. But like I said, if China truly had the ambition that we ascribe to them in terms of dominating the globe, this is their moment, They would just fuck America right now. They would literally fuck the entire planet right now, crash the dollar, turn around and say, well, you guys sure need a manufacturing engine, a country that is stable, a country that has a lot of industrial output, a country that, controls 50+% of all chemicals procured, a country that dominates in sectors like, some of the leading tech sectors, like fucking 80% of drones coming out of China, all that sort of stuff. Like a country like that could become the global hegemonic superpower, and rewrite the entire rules of global trade. Obviously, I don't think that is something that they're interested in. They could sell their dollar reserves and U.S. Treasury bonds and occupy Taiwan in the same day. Exactly. I mean, or if they could have occupied Taiwan when America was busy with Israel and Ukraine and getting fucking dicked on. If they wanted to fuck up the bag, if they were truly as belligerent as we claim they are, which is pure projection and nothing else, there are many opportunities for them to do so. So I think right now, when they say we're going to fight till the very end, I think it's just a moment where China is showing the world how unstable America is. But I do think that inevitably they will offer a helping hand to fix the situation in spite of America's inability or interest in stabilizing global trade. There will be a little gift, I think, that Xi will give after making everyone around the globe understand how fucking unstable the United States of America is, where one singular psycho could just completely nuke global trade in its entirety. Once everyone is assuredly familiar with American instability, he will turn around and he'll be like, yeah, we'll fix it. Don't worry. That's my suspicion. This doesn't mean that things are going to be good in the interim for Americans in general, and especially the American working class. It certainly will not. There's going to be a lot of unstable times in our immediate future. Having said that, that's my prediction. Maybe I'm wrong, you know? How does he fix it? He offers a aesthetic assurance to Donald Trump that makes Trump feel like he won something out of this, and every dumb fucking piglet in America is cackling like the hyenas that they are. That like, we did it, we dominated China, we're still number one, baby. Psh, hell yeah. That's what it is. That's what I think is going to happen, because these guys know how to fucking manipulate this moron. Okay. That's the reason why this moron constantly says, oh, Xi Jinping, we're good friends. He likes me. I like him. We got very good relationships. Like, every single smart statesman knows how to fucking manipulate this donkey. Okay. All you got to do is be like, yeah, you're awesome. You're so hot. You're so brave. You're so smart. Yeah, we're really fucking you over on trade. You know, that's all they need to do. They don't believe it. They don't agree with it. They know he's a dumbass. They know America is unstable. Okay. And you want to know what's really funny about all of this? At a certain point, when we look back at all of the bounties of American empire, especially in the late stage capitalism, the neoliberal post-Reagan era, we got to look back at all this fucking wealth transfer that took place, where we generated so much value. Where did it go? Someone's got to ask this question. Trillions of fucking dollars over multiple decades. Where the fuck did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? Someone's got to ask that question. Where did it go? Because all of these cheap, affordable goods, they're coming to the United States of America. We're purchasing them. That's fine. You know, that's great. It makes you feel like your living conditions are significantly better. And yet, in that same time frame, we are creating complex financial tools, complex financial technology. We're selling that to the rest of the world. Where is that going? Where is all that bounty going? Where is all that wealth going? Why is it not going back to building the American infrastructure? Why is that not going back to ensuring that Americans have decent paying jobs? All of the raping and pillaging of the fucking entire planet, and none of the bounties, with the exception of affordable treats. Affordable treats so that you feel like you are on top. You feel like your living standards are better year over year. This is at the heart of the contradictions within global capitalism. That's it. Yeah, I saw this relevant clip from Jack Ma. Exactly. He's asked a similar question as well. You know, he is He's gone back and forth on his loyalties, but here, let's hear what he says here.
The Americans said, we just want to control the IP, we just want to technology, we just want the brand to leave the lower end jobs for the world. Great strategy. Past 30 years, IBM, Cisco, Microsoft, they made tons of money. The profit they made are much more than the 4 largest banks in China. But where'd the money go? Past 30 years, the American had 13 wars, spending $14.2 trillion. The money going there. What if they spend a part of that money on building up the infrastructure, helping the white collars and the blue collars? No matter how strategy good it is, you're supposed to spend money on your own people. And the other money, which I'm curious about, is that when I was young, I heard America is bad. Ford and Boeing, those big manufacturing companies. The last 10, 20 years, I heard about is Silicon Valley and Wall Street. The money go to the Wall Street. And what happened? Year 2008. The financial crisis wiped out $19.2 trillion USA alone. They wiped out all the white collars and destroyed 34 million jobs globally. So what if the money is not Wall Street? What if the money spent on the Middle East, Middle West of the United States? Developing the industry there, that could be changed a lot. So it's not the other countries steal jobs from you guys. It is your strategy. Okay, but
What do you think?
Yeah. That's it. That's it. It is endless profit seeking that is getting to a stage, endless profit seeking that has caused domestic instability in this country, that is also causing global instability. Because the reality of the matter is, if America wanted to extend a lifeline to American empire, it would at least abide by like Keynesian principles and engage in more redistributive policies in an effort to ensure that it has like at least some semblance of a manufacturing base, or rather good paying jobs and less instability internally in the nation, so that a dumb fuck like Donald Trump couldn't actually rise to power. But these guys are so short-term profit oriented, profit that stays at the top, profit that has to be retained by the most powerful individuals because of their supercharged pro-capitalist dogmatic ways of thinking, that they have basically fucked it up. They used, abused, and pillaged all the way to the very end. And now we're staring down the barrel of the gun, where the gun is actually being pointed at us. In the process, China was able to take advantage of that situation and the endless appetite for capital owners and the endless defense of capital owners from the American empire to basically say, yeah, we'll manufacture your shit. It's cool. We would love to do that. Thank you for the privilege. Our people are poor. Our people are suffering. We would love to take advantage of the foreign capital that comes into our country. We will, of course, take your IP as well in the process. You already know that that's going to happen. That's basically a handshake deal. And if China had kept up its end of the bargain and remained poor and did not engage in redistributive policies, then America would have been fine with the super profits, or at least would have allowed, at least would have created this imbalanced trade structure. Hey. Fiona, stop. Why does she do this all the time? And she like wags her tail too. Bilmiyorum niye böyle bağırıyor. Hey. Açar mısın şunu? Hadi çıkar. Get out. Fiona is old. She's barking at my dad. Anyway. Yeah, Kaya don't give a fuck. All right, let's continue. Getting back to the matter at hand.
Happening.
We think we're in very good shape. We think we're doing very well. Again, there'll be a transition cost, and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
Stock futures are right now up across the board. Let's see if they stay a beautiful thing today. But what is concerning investors a lot right at the moment, the U.S. dollar falling to its weakest level against the euro in 3 years. CNN's Elena Treen at the White House for us once again. CNN's Mark Stewart, we're not letting him go. He's in Beijing for us. Mark, tell us more about China's counterpunch and what it's going to mean.
Hi, Kate. Good morning. Look, none of this is a surprise. These latest tariffs are very much in the Chinese playbook. But what's very attention-getting to me is the fact that China is now saying it's not going to raise tariffs any higher, saying it has other weapons, almost making fun of the United States for raising the stakes, raising the numbers so high. Let me share with you some remarks we got late today from a government official here in Beijing who said that the United States is engaging in nothing more than a numbers game with no real economic significance, going on to say the United States is exposing itself as a participant in weaponizing tariffs, as a tool of bullying and coercion, turning itself into a joke. So that is the latest where China stands in this back and forth tit for tat. The other big headline of the day is that we are hearing from Chinese President Xi Jinping, really the first time since this whole trade war escalated to such a high level. The big headline is that he is saying China is not afraid. These are remarks that were made with the Spanish Prime Minister here in Beijing.
Yeah. What's up? How can anyone look at the situation right now and go, "Oh, dude, we're really fucking long dicking the Chinese right now. We're killing it, dude. We're killing it." Like, how do you look? How can you be so stupid? Like Donald Trump's statements, if you are optics focused, if you're like a fucking animal, okay, barely capable of critical thought, all right, you can still look at the optics of the situation of Donald Trump's attitude shifting dramatically over the course of the past week, where he went from, we're going to destroy China, China is terrified, they're so scared, to, why won't China call me? China, you really need to call me. Please call me, China. China, call me. I've learned Mandarin. I say, what's up, Beijing, too? Call me. Too much winning. Like, he literally went from saying China is going to come and eat our ass, they're fucking peasants, to like, please call me. It would be really nice if you called me. How is that not triggering any fucking red flags in your mind? You can be the dumbest person on the planet and still recognize when someone is being desperate. And it's not the Chinese that are being desperate in this process. It's crazy. I expect people to at least be like, I don't know, maybe I expect too much from Americans, but I really do. I really do expect people to just like, take their heads out of their assholes a little bit for a brief moment and recognize what is happening right in front of their fucking eyes, you know? Yeah, Victor Gao is popping off. Let's see what he had to say.
The problem is that in this scenario, to use your metaphor, the US has the bigger gun. And so China ends up having more to lose from this trade war, doesn't it? You know, it can't sustain the loss of 15% of its export market, i.e. what you export to the US.
She's trying to come back in here. No, you lost your privileges. She barked. She barked at my dad when he walked in. She barked too much. She was trying to push the gate so that she can come back in here. Bro, the Saudis rode this donkey to the bank. You think Xi and Putin can't? Oh my gosh, she's still trying. Okay. Okay, here. No more barking, though. If you bork again, I'm kicking you out. All right, I let her in. She was doing a protective you and you banned her, let her in? No. Look at this. Look at this little baby. Look at this little fucking baby. Acting like she's all innocent. Do you see this? Are you innocent? Fifi? Fiona? Fiona? Okay, we gave her the ban appeal. Fifi needs a Gucci bed. She'll be fine. She barks at billionaires. Yeah. She read the AI article that said my dad was the richest person in Turkey and she hates billionaires, so she started barking at him. She changed up. Anyway, let's get back. So the anchor asked, like, don't you think America has a bigger gun in this process? Okay. Don't you think America has more to gain from engaging in this back and forth? Let's see what his reaction is.
Ends up having more to lose from this trade war, doesn't it? You know, it can't sustain the loss of 15% of its export market, i.e. what you export to the US.
Not at all. China is fully prepared to fight to the very end because the world is big enough that the United States is not the totality of the market in the world. So if the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care. We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States, and we survived. Right. And if the United States wants to bully China, we will deal with the situation without the United States. And we expect to survive for another 5,000 years.
The problem is that in this scenario, to use...
I mean, look, this is just posturing. If I'm being really real right now, it's just posturing, okay? They do care because they don't want America to collapse. Because if America collapses, then the entire global trade collapses, which is part of the reason why I think that they will eventually extend a helping hand to the United States of America and will say, it's fine, you know, yes, you did it. You destroyed us in this. You destroyed us in this process. You really did. You killed us. And then all of the dumbest people all the dumbest people on the fucking planet that keep looking at how the market's turned green today, I guess things are fine, even though basic goods are going to be at least double the price now. Those fucking dumbasses will turn around and be like, we did it. Woo! We did it. We fucking destroyed China. Hell yeah. They're just posturing at this point to show America, but more importantly than the United States of America, America's global trading partners, allies, and adversaries, and neutral nations alike, that one of the two polar opposites, okay, the two poles of power on the planet, one spells disorder and instability in the long term. The other will maintain stability. This is an incredible opportunity for China to show everyone, including the EU, for example, that it is the new game in town that will have long-term stability and commitment to long-term stability in mind. I don't know. I think they're serious on their non-interventionist policy. No, I that's what I think too. Why wouldn't China like to be the sole world superpower? Because with great power comes great responsibility. And most importantly, China, it looks within. They don't care. They don't give a shit about having 800 military bases. I mean, what Jack Ma says there is basically Jack Ma being a person who, when he stepped out of line, had to go away for a little bit. But in that moment, he is speaking as a vessel for the Chinese state and their interests. There is no reason to assume that that thought is not also reflected by the CPC's attitude in general, which is we care about building cities. We care about improving the material conditions of our citizens more than we care about global dominance, because global dominance requires a shit ton of money and effort to be spent in the direction of building a robust military apparatus and constantly engaging in interventions all around the globe. They know that. They see America failing right now. It is, I think it quite literally is a matter of thinking in quarters, which is what capitalism forces you to do, as opposed to thinking in centuries.
And according to state media, he said that China is going to continue to remain.
Their lack of interest in global dominance does not come from... Their lack of interest in global dominance does not stem from the fact that they're magnanimous, dude. It is still a self-interested position. What do you not understand? I'm not saying they're fucking awesome and kind-hearted. This is something that people do not comprehend about it, okay? Their lack of interest in global dominance does not come from how magnanimous they are, okay? Their lack of interest in global dominance comes from self-interest. That's it. It's not altruistic. I've told you time and time again, there is literally a group of people, a group of peasants that are armed and willing to fight against one of the only holdouts in China's backyard, which is an American military base, okay? The Philippines. You have Maoist rebels that are waiting, primed. What does China do? China has helped the Filipino government as opposed to the fucking Maoist rebels. You think America in that situation would not arm the fuck out of those rebels, would not do everything in its power to make sure that those Maoist rebels are primed for overthrowing the Filipino government? Are you kidding me? They're ideologically aligned. They're fucking Maoists. What are we talking about? Why the fuck does China not do that? This is an example that I use all the time. Like, there's no reason. People look at like what they did in Hong Kong or fantasize about what they might do to Taiwan all the fucking time as a reason as to why China has like imperial ambitions. Okay? They care more about stability than anything else. Hasan, you took my $6 lying about TTS. Shut the fuck up and refund it, dumb fuck. Okay? When have you ever heard text-to-speech on this broadcast? I got to change that, actually, on my fucking stream as well. I'm like, no one ever really gives donations like that anyway. But imagine fucking chirping about that when you can literally directly access me by just writing in the chat for fucking free and be an annoying little douchebag as you are right now. You know that TTS doesn't fucking work. Last time I used text-to-speech was fucking 5 years ago. I'm gonna take it out right now. Actually, I'm gonna take it out of my fucking panel right now. Dumb fuck. He's just chirping in here. Take it. Yeah, just refund it. Refund it, dipshit. Good. Fiona, I will kick you out. I will kick you out. Stop barking. Hayır, hıf hıf maf yapıyor. There you go. I changed it. I said, don't know if you want. I don't care. No TTS. There you go. I hope that's Comparing 70s China to the USA is crazy talk, dude. You have no idea what you're talking about. Wait, what? 70s China to the United States? When did I do that? By saying they didn't arm Philippines? Do you think the Filipino Maoist rebel groups don't exist currently? I'm talking about what China did under Duterte, where they literally helped the Duterte government. The fuck? The rebels are still there, dumbass. And the Chinese government has literally sided with the Duterte government at the time because they thought that would actually be a better method of ensuring that the Filipino government plays ball with them when they're trying to create security cooperation agreements in their own fucking backyard in the South China Sea. That's not in the 70s.
And confident, it's going to remain focused, saying there are no real winners in the trade war. Kate, the language that we're hearing from Xi Jinping is very consistent with what we've heard from other government officials over the last few days. And as you mentioned, as far as the possibility of a phone call between Xi Jinping and President Trump, not in the near future. That's the messaging that we're feeling from Beijing, at least.
And that is quite a statement that you got from that government official. Just, the gloves are off now in terms of how the two sides are going to be talking about it. We will need to stand by and see how Donald Trump responds to that. But also stand by with me, Mark. I'm going to get to the White House and get to Elena Treen here. Elena, are you getting any reaction yet this morning to this escalation from China?
So far, the White House has not responded to the latest remarks from China or from President Xi. But what I will say is that
who is yelling in the background? What is happening? Either someone's yelling in the newsroom or they're yelling in the room with Trump. Someone's yelling. I think the peasant stuff was too much of a slap to the face. Yes, but that's good propaganda internally to be like, yeah, there might be a period of downturn, right? But we'll overcome it. But we have to overcome it because these guys are calling you peasants.
The White House has been very dug in on its position as it relates to China. They're acting very defiant in this kind of trade tit for tat that we are seeing. But I think what's been very clear so far, Kate, is that this position is not going to be tenable for much longer. At some point, the two sides are going to need to really open lines of communications. Now, we actually have a story out this morning kind of breaking all of this down. But at the crux of it, Kate, is this. Two White House officials tell me that the president and the U.S. will not reach out to China first. The president has made it clear to his team and to his advisors that he wants China to come to them. And really, he wants to have a high-level meeting.
I told you already, China will. I think China will call first. They'll use this period of instability to show the rest of the world what is going on. They'll use this period of instability to show the world how dangerous and unstable America is. Like, no offense, Hasan, but you haven't talked at all about how the fact that the majority of Americans have some obvious racism towards Chinese people. Wait, what? Okay, yeah, they do. How can I have a conversation about, like, how can we have a conversation about global trade without some fucking radlib coming in here and being like, Americans are very xenophobic. I know, dude. Who cares? Okay, that's not what we're talking about right now. Like, yeah, I know. Americans are very racist by and large. It is what it is.
directly between him and President Xi himself. Now, this has been what the White House has been communicating to Beijing for several months now. But on the other side, we also know that Beijing does not really want to have that high level meeting. What they've been trying to do is open communications at a lower level. And so really there's been this stalemate and no talks at all going on right now between the Trump administration and that of
the American racist attitude towards China is so negligible in this conversation. You think that's the reason why Trump is making these decisions? No, that's just a marketing technique that will, just like the peasant statement is a great opportunity for the Chinese government to tell its citizenry to remain strong in the face of oppression, because a big part of Chinese development comes off of, a big part of why they love Mao, a big part of Chinese development comes off of the backs of a century of humiliation from Western powers, okay, and of course Japan as well, but like that in and of itself is something that's very important. So it's a galvanizing factor there. But the real reasons as to why these great powers behave in the ways that they do is not because of fucking racism. I would go so far as to say it's still very much the fear of losing capitalism and the dominance of capital, global capital, more so than racism against the Chinese or Orientalism. Racism against the Chinese for the average citizen allows, I don't know, like the fucking Asmongold chat to keep masturbating to a world that does not exist, where America is still all that. America is still very powerful and not the fucking declining empire of belligerent morons. You know? That's it. That's what it helps the dumbass Americans go, yeah, well, you know, things are like $30 more. A t-shirt now costs $78, but let me tell you, okay, it's still fine because my dear leader's still going to show what's what to the goddamn Chinese. Base material, dude, you are so uneducated and weak on Maoism in China. Maoism is Stalinism in China today, is not socialist. They are capitalist. Oh my God, dude. I'm not saying China today is Maoist, you fucking dingus. Of course it's not Maoist. Their socialist attitude has evolved over time. It does not matter if a government actually had interest in foreign intervention. There are still existing Maoist rebel groups that they could use to their advantage to destabilize foreign countries in their fucking backyard and potentially even overthrow. If they wanted to do America shit, there is plenty of opportunity for China to do America shit with ideologically aligned movements, militia movements. My statement on the unwillingness of the modern Chinese government in engaging in this sort of intervention is the point. That is the point. Yes, they're not Maoist. Mao Zedong thought still influences a lot of the underpinning of Chinese attitudes and Chinese development, Chinese prosperity, but it's not a complete Maoist country. It's not. It's not at all. And no, I don't think Maoism is Stalinism. Maoism is Stalinism. I am a liberal.
President Xi. Now,
What is it with leftists and their obsession with Marxist orthodoxy, despite the fact that China itself is adhering to Marxism by examining their own material conditions? I mean, it's ironic because, like, in some ways, I understand why you would hold on to a mythological understanding of what previous relatively successful socialist experiments have looked like. I get it, because it's not like we have living, breathing socialism here in the United States of America. So you look to historical examples of where socialism has been attempted. Okay. A socialist transitional state has been attempted. This is, you know, USSR is, I think, a valid project to point to. But then, ironically enough, that person then turns around and goes, but they haven't adhered to the principled Marxist orthodoxy. When you talk about Stalin's attempts or Mao's attempts, like, they're not also adhering to principled Marxist orthodoxy either. And they shouldn't, regardless. There is, like, I think it's kind of silly to have this attitude. You have to ultimately adhere to your living, breathing, existing material conditions and restructure your attitude. This is precisely the reason why I'm not going to sit here and fucking be like, well, they're not a fully, you know, they're not they're not completely controlled by the workers, you know, or whatever the fuck. It's like, well, they're doing a lot better than we are. Okay.
Hurdle of
yeah, nor did Lenin. Traditional Marxist Orthodox thought Germany is where the revolution would start. I think that was a fair assessment, to be fair. I think that was a fair assessment to make at the time.
We're hearing behind the scenes here at the White House is that the president believes that President Xi does not want to be seen as weak. And that's really as well kind of what's coming into this refusal and waiting to see who blinks first here. Now, we've also heard President Donald Trump say that he is confident that he can reach a deal at some point. He said that he believes China will come around. He said China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how to go about it. They're proud people.
I love the conversations that we're having in here right now about, like, whether China has a principled Maoist stance, okay, or if it's evolved in a direction that you don't think is appropriate, even though I haven't seen you fucking attempt living, breathing, existing socialism, okay? But meanwhile, our leadership in the United States of America is like, they're gonna call me tomorrow. Like, we are led by delusional morons, okay? and you guys over here are talking about, like, I'm a left comm, or I'm a fucking, I'm an orthodox Marxian, and I don't think that China is doing enough, or whatever the fuck. It's like, dude, shut up. Just analyze what is in front of us, okay? Eyes on the prize, guys.
We've heard similar rhetoric from some of his top economic advisors saying that the ball is now in China's court. It's clear that's not how China sees this, but I think the key question now moving forward is that really how this all is decided is going to be on how much
0.0001% of communism has been built. Keep at it, comrades. Yes.
Pain are they willing to take? How much more pain are they willing to see in this escalation of these tariffs without any real communications to ensure there's an off-ramp?
Yeah, exactly. How much pain is the Trump administration willing to endure, and also the American people? How much pain is China willing to endure as well? Elena, stick with me. Mark, in this moment, this tit for tat has been going on now, you know, for quite some time.
Yeah. No, it's Republicans. I say your enemies in China is global capital, and this person quote tweeted me and said, "No, it's Republicans." Yeah, dude. Thank you for this assessment. I loved Republicans, so I'm glad. Asmigel suddenly watching China Observer content about how the U.S. tariffs are already causing the collapse of Chinese factories. He has no defense about even the most obvious propaganda. It's awesome. Yes, it's copium. They're engaging in copium. The problem is, the more copium that you inhale, okay, the more copium that you inhale, the more delusional you become, and the more confused you become when things don't pan out the way that you expect them to. Ultimately, there is one thing that you cannot overcome, though. No matter how much fucking crack cocaine you smoke, in the form of China is collapsing any day now style content, which many liberals have consumed in perpetuity, there is going to come a breaking point. There's going to be a moment where you overdose, where you look at your bank account and realize that your money is no longer going the way that it did, okay? At the top of the hour, you're like, I want to subscribe. But now, because of the tariffs, the $6 a month subscription has turned into a $16 a month subscription because Amazon is no longer making as much money. because Amazon Prime has now become infinitely more expensive, even though it's for free as long as you have an Amazon Prime account, which, by the way, in the interim, you should subscribe to me. Even though I don't actually serve top of the hour ad breaks, you should still subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get one free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully that's me. Thank you, Barry Balls, for the 10 community gifted subs. We still have Oilers in here. Okay. What is it? Amlo's a look say. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Hasan's Art of the Deal. Captain Tuga. Thank you for the 10 gifted. So fucking bad, bro. Thank you for the 5 gifted. Zylax with 100 big ones. HX Bone with a 5 gifted. Holy moly.
Time. Why do you think, and what are you hearing about why Xi Jinping is speaking out in this moment?
I think really 2 reasons, Kate. Number one, simply being it's time. The Chinese economy, in addition to what's happening now, is already dealing for Xi Jinping to continue to build national...
They shut him off. They were like, no more China lies.
Unity to build national pride as it deals with yet another economic headwind. And then the other reason, if we look at the calendar, Xi Jinping is about to embark on a trip to Cambodia, to Vietnam, and Malaysia. These are key trading partners. These are relationships that he has been strengthening over the years. So as he builds bridges to these other nations, it's a way to also project some stability and to let the world know where China stands and that it is a strong, formidable player.
Absolutely. Vietnam, one of the nations also that the Trump administration is trying to prioritize and renegotiating a trade deal now. All of it related, likely none of it a coincidence in this moment. Mark, thank you so much. Elena at the White House for us, as always. Thank you guys very, very much.
Kit, while I have you, and this is actually some information that we just received right now from the State Council Tariff Commission, saying in a statement a short while ago that China will be raising retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports to 125%. This is information that's just coming into CNN right now, again, citing the State Council Tariff Commission. I'm curious what your immediate reaction is with your expertise, this counterstrike, shall we call it, from China directed at the U.S. business market.
It's not so surprising, you know, in the sense that they'll do the same. The key, of course, is that the U.S. is the big importer. The Chinese don't import anything like as much from the United States as the United States imports from China. So other countries come back with a tariff response, but the whole starting point from this in the United States was we're running a massive trade deficit, and we don't run big surpluses with anybody. So we can raise tariffs on you, and if you retaliate, it has less impact on us net. So I'm not massively surprised. It just keeps the whole thing, the chance of quick resolution and of us getting back to a world of free trade seem to be fading, and there will be a negative growth effect around the world that it's going to be hard to avoid now.
Fascinating. And finally, Kit, I'm curious, what are some of those factors that, and speaking of foreign investment, what are some of those factors that can tend to scare foreign investors away from U.S. assets? Is it this talk of tariffs?
No, I think it's if the tariffs reduce the profitability of U.S. companies, do I need to own so many of my U.S. equities? They've done fantastically. Am I worried that if the Chinese decide they no longer want to hold U.S. treasuries to the size that they used to, that I'm going to cause a loss of the U.S. Treasury market's really important status as the safest asset in the world, and the rise in U.S. yields? Some of it reflects weaker demand, so people are going to pay much more attention to Treasury auctions going forwards from here. But another part of it, quite simply, is foreigners have accumulated $65 trillion worth of U.S. assets. That's a lot of your money to have parked in one place. And if you're worried that the U.S. is withdrawing into itself a little bit more now, maybe you want to lighten up and put some of it somewhere else if you can.
We got to leave it there. Kit Jukes, thank you so much for your expertise. We're really glad that we have that insight. Appreciate you.
Have you seen this tweet from the Chinese Foreign Ministry? That's the official account of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
What this tweet says about the U.S.-China trade war. Scary. I wonder if they'll bring up that Mao Zedong single-handedly assassinated 700 billion people. I can't believe that the Chinese embassy posted Mao. I'll have you know, he single-handedly murdered 700 billion people. And he'll do it again. Oh, Jesus. It's true. I was there. Yeah.
Of China, sharing a quote from the former Chinese dictator Mao Zedong during the Korean War, the last time the U.S. and China were shooting at each other. And the message was, China will not yield to the U.S. That's an important signal as to how China sees the current trade war with the
Come on, man. The famine was unironically bad and Mao made it worse. Absolutely. Except we never look at famine under fucking capitalism. There were thousands of famines that took place before the redevelopment of a agrarian society filled to the brim with fucking peasants and landlords. Okay? You have to adjust your expectations to the material realities at the time and then the material realities that came after. Wake up. We have abundance. We have a food surplus on the planet right now, and 14 million people still die every fucking year due to famine. Very different set of circumstances. Famine took place in South Korea at the time as well. Thousands of famines have taken place in China over thousands of years. Now look at the situation. The only way that South Korea was able to avoid famine, by the way, as opposed to like North Korea, for example, is because they got help. They got aid. And this is before we talk about actual directed famines that were man-made, whether it be the famine in Yemen that the Western-backed coalition forces led by the UAE and Saudi Arabia implemented on Yemen, the poorest nation on the planet, or the potato famine. Like, there's a shit ton of directional famine that other superpowers have done to the places that we're exploiting. Oh.
the U.S., and that is that Chinese leaders do not want to be bullied by the U.S. president, and crucially, they don't want the Chinese people to see them being bullied by the U.S. president. That said, I'm told that Chinese leaders are open to negotiations with the U.S., but at this point, they don't see the channels open for those negotiations, and it's their perception the U.S. is not making an effort to open those channels. This is one more crucial point, that if and when negotiations happen, Xi Jinping is not going to meet Donald Trump, I'm told, at the very beginning of those negotiations. They want the agreements worked out first. They do not want a Zelensky in the Oval Office moment.
Disrespectful to the country.
Where the Chinese leader would be surprised or embarrassed. And that's key as we wait for any movement here in this trade war between the world's two economic superpowers.
Just hours after President Trump called China's leader Xi Jinping a friend, China is calling President Trump's policies a joke and retaliating again. Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods are now at 125%. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods are 145%, meaning American consumers and businesses are likely in for more pain. Yale's Budget Lab is estimating that Trump's tariffs are going to cost at the average household $4,700 extra a year. Let's bring in Douglas Holtz-Eakin. He was the chief economist for the White House Council of Economic Advisors under President George W. Bush. He's also the president of the American Action Forum. Doug, always great to see you. What does this Chinese escalation of 125% on U.S. goods mean for the U.S. economy?
Well, it's just more bad news. And, you know, as you reported, we saw incredibly poor consumer sentiment numbers this morning. In that survey, by the way, consumers expected inflation to be 6.7%, the highest we've seen since 1981. So people are expecting costs to go up. Retaliation by China adds to those upward pressures.
Oh, no. Louisiana, immigration judge rules that Colombia activist Mahmoud Khalil can be deported. Oh, fuck. So all she needed to hear was the vague, generalized statements devoid of any evidence whatsoever to say that someone can be deported. This is a boundary break. This is precedent setting. We'll talk about that in a little bit. This country fucking sucks, dude.
Money has to come from somewhere. It'll come out of other purchases by households. That's going to slow the growth in the economy. And businesses are comparably concerned about the outlook. So the fallout of this trade war has been very significant already, although it has not yet shown up in rising unemployment, some of the other things you'd want to watch pretty carefully.
A spokesman for China's Commerce Ministry, Douglas, said that the U.S. is risking turning itself into a joke by using tariffs as a bullying and coercion tactic. How are other countries, do you think, viewing the U.S.? Because obviously it is very problematic for America if they are seen in all of this as the bad guy, and China is seen as being more reasonable.
Well, there's a real concern because the White House has yet to articulate what, for example, they want China to do in order to lower the tariffs. And they've encouraged, 70-odd countries to negotiate with the White House. But to what end? What is it that the White House wants from each of those 70 countries in order to get tariffs to go back down? So if you're just imposing tariffs and you provide no signal as to what the negotiation is about, you look like a bully. You're inflicting pain for no apparent reason. And I think there needs to be a real clear articulation of the strategy, because right now we're getting nothing but bad news out of these tariffs, and there's no pathway to getting some benefits at the other end.
The Chinese economy obviously relies heavily on manufacturing. Last year they had a $1.1 trillion trade surplus with the United States. How much pain do you think their economy can endure, given that the biggest market for them, the biggest market in the world, is the United States?
This is a significant blow to the China economy. There's no question about it. And we're going to see it slow sharply. Now, as you and I both know, the Chinese Communist Party has a tight grip on the country. Its ability to withstand that pain comes at the expense of its citizens, but it will withstand the pain. I'm worried about the fact that people have lost sight that the second largest manufacturer in the world is the United States, and that we do more manufacturing than Japan and Germany combined. And this whole thing is predicated on the notion that somehow the U.S. doesn't have any manufacturing anymore, and that's just not true. What we're doing now is taking the established manufacturing giants in the world, China and the United States, and pitting them one against the other. And as I said before, to what end? We both are going to see higher inflation. We're both going to see slower economic growth, and I'm not sure what we'll see in terms of benefits for the economy.
The U.S.-China piece, and of course it is so big, perhaps it should eclipse the 10% tariffs that are still in place across other countries, but they are. And you have the European Union's economy commissioner calling it a blow to the global economy. To what end there? Sure. Is that clear to you?
No. And I think that it's easy to lose perspective. I mean, it's been the longest 5-day week in recent economic history. So, but when the president proposed a 10% universal tariff on the campaign trail, there was essentially universal condemnation of the idea, and most economists saying, "Oh my goodness, that's a terrible idea. That's an enormous tariff. We don't want to see that." But we have that, and we have a lot on top of it. We've got steel and aluminum and cars, China, Mexico, Canada. So the fact that he paused the reciprocal tariffs doesn't mean that he's eased up. This is a tremendous imposition of tariffs. And the U.S. tariff rates are now extraordinarily high. And what will we get for that? It's far from obvious. I don't know what he wants to accomplish.
Maybe whatever he does accomplish in a deal, then he can herald as a success, which we've seen as a strategy of the president. So,
yeah.
But that's difficult for other countries as they try to figure out what they're doing, as you point out. Douglas Holtz-Eakin, thank you so much for being with us.
The United States, with President Trump and President Xi and China digging in their heels, China increasing their tariffs now to 125%, calling this back and forth, quote, silly. What has the reaction been? I'm wondering, you're in New York, but obviously you have so many contacts in China now. What has the reaction been, if there has been one, from the president, as we've been reporting, wanting a phone call now with President Xi?
Sure. Great to be here, Bianca. So President Trump has made it clear that he's waiting for a call from President Xi Jinping. It's not going to happen. The reason being, it's extremely rare for Chinese leaders to reach out to foreign leaders without any kind of preparation. Now we're just not seeing any kind of communication, high-level communication going on between Washington and Beijing. We had a big piece early this week talking about China's efforts to get to the core team of the Trump administration has repeatedly failed because there's such a mismatch between how China operates and the Trump administration's style. So what we're seeing right now is really a stalemate in communication between Trump administration and Beijing. And for Xi Jinping to reach out to Trump and to have this conversation, and especially given the kind of pressure China is under right now, it's very, very unlikely.
Do you think this is an example of just having lack of knowledge about the Chinese culture, the Communist parties functioning there? I mean, because it seems as if roles are reversed. I remember when Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker, visited Taiwan, and there was a lot of frustration in China, in Beijing, as to how the President of the United States could have allowed that without understanding they're two separate branches. Are we seeing the opposite here, in your view, that there's a lack of understanding as to the nationalism, perhaps, and the pride from someone, an authoritarian like Xi Jinping, and
we're such a fucking ridiculous country, bro. It's just, I mean, how could this be read as anything but propaganda, especially at this very moment? You know? You got Adolf Hitler in power right now, doing deportation schemes for the crime of hurting the feelings of a foreign nation. And you're like, it's this real authoritarian, brutal dictatorship of Xi Jinping that doesn't want to play ball with America's belligerent nuking of the entire global economy. So that must be because they're incredibly nationalistic. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude?
Very, very unlikely.
Do you think this is an example of just having lack of knowledge about the Chinese culture, the Communist parties functioning there? I mean, because it seems as if roles are reversed. I remember when Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker, visited Taiwan, and there was a lot of frustration in China, in Beijing, as to how the President of the United States could have allowed that without understanding they're two separate branches. Are we seeing the opposite here, in your view, that there's a lack of understanding as to the nationalism, perhaps, and the pride from someone, an authoritarian like Xi Jinping, and acquiescing to what he's viewing as a demand from the United States?
So the Trump administration, it does appear that they know China. They know China pretty well. The Trump team, they do understand, who are the people in China who have the direct lines to Xi Jinping. So what they have requested is to talk to people who are really close to Xi, but that's not how China operates. They want to go through the established diplomatic channels. They want to go through the established ways of doing things. So this huge mismatch is really why we are, stuck right now, basically.
There's new reporting just coming into the Situation Room right now. We've learned that the Trump administration had private.
Yes, I'm going to talk about Mahmoud Khalil in a second. I know, chatters. It's in the fucking title. God damn, I know.
Negotiations with China, warning officials there against retaliatory tariffs. But those behind-the-scenes talks evidently did not work. CNN's chief national affairs correspondent Jeff Zeleny is over at the White House watching all of this for us. Jeff, what's the reaction over there after those warnings apparently fell on deaf ears?
Well, if they did fall on deaf ears, but it's just the latest example in the really day by day, the deepening trade war that is underway between the United States and China. Yes, we are learning that U.S. officials privately behind the scenes urged China to not retaliate. In fact, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has been saying that publicly all along, warning countries to not retaliate. Well, those warnings have fallen on deaf ears, particularly with China, as they raised their tariffs to 125%. The question...
You can't see the full title on mobile? Shut the fuck up, dumbass. It's the first statement in the title. Mahmoud Khalil deportation is the first, literally the first words in the title is Mahmoud Khalil. What do you mean you can't see it in the title? I put it in the fucking front of the title. You just don't know how to read. You're not literate. I'm also putting it on the fucking screen.
Now is which side is going to blink, if either. And Matt was just talking about consumer confidence. The prices are going to go up. There's no question about it. That's what the White House is bracing for. That's what the administration is bracing for. It's one of the big reasons the president had a dramatic pullback on a sweeping tariff plan just a couple days ago. And the market, of course, reacted very well in the moment. But in a couple days since, it certainly has not. The bond market also has not strengthening. So this is going to be one of the central questions here. But Wolf, we're also learning just inside the White House, the president, as he embarks on this 3-month pause on a sweeping tariff plan, there's competing views from his team of economic rivals, if you will. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, a long history on Wall Street, he is one of the people the president is listening to the most on this, of course. Kevin Hassett is as well. But Peter Navarro, the man right in the middle of the screen there, he is someone who has been very pro-supportive of these tariffs, and the president did not heed his advice this week. So as the president goes forward on this, as the consumer sentiment prices rise, which advisor is going to sort of win out on this? So there's no doubt the president at the center of all these new trade negotiations now has to negotiate with some 90 countries or so. So, Wolf, all of this is coming front and center here is the economy. That inflation report, the rising inflation, is one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest worries for this administration.
I do want to bring in CNN's Kylie Atwood. She has some new reporting on how President Trump in the U.S., the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, have interacted, and I guess the best way to say it, have not interacted, Kylie, since this trade war began. And you have some great new reporting on why that is.
Dana, just hours before these new retaliatory tariffs came out from China this morning, the Trump administration had privately warned Chinese officials of two things. First of all, not to retaliate, which we heard from Trump time and time again over the last few weeks, but also that China should be requesting a phone call between President Trump and President Xi. China has not done that so far. They've been telling China to do this for months now, according to a source familiar with that working level dialogue between the two sides. We know that Xi and Trump spoke before inauguration. They haven't had a conversation as this trade war has escalated. And senior White House officials tell Elena Trine that Trump is waiting for Xi to make the first move here. He thinks the onus is on the Chinese leader to do so. But when you talk to folks, there's a fundamental disagreement about how this could all come together. And that is one of the challenges, as there is this remaining question, an urgent question really, as to how they're going to create an off-ramp for this escalating trade war.
Here is where the trade war stands right now. 145 going up against 125. These are the tariffs between the world's two biggest economies.
And here's another number, 4,700 or about $400 per month. That is how much more money Yale's now estimating, the Yale Budget Lab, that President Trump's tariffs are going to cost average households each year. And with just hours left in trading, the Dow right now up. You're seeing that swing here going into the afternoon, up almost 650 points. But it was up and down there throughout earlier in the day. With us now, we have CNN business editor-at-large Richard Quest. We have CNN chief national security analyst Jim Sciutto as well. Richard, a key economic gauge, the consumer sentiment now at its second lowest level on record, going back to 1952. Why?
We shouldn't be surprised with all that's coming out and all the worries about tariffs. It's not just that, it's the complexity of everything else as well. The changes within the federal government, the worries about job losses, the worries about a slowing economy, higher inflation, and eventually you get these what's known as soft data. They're surveys like the Michigan survey, consumer sentiment, and it's a really worrying number because at some point these sentiment surveys feed into hard data of real consumer spending. And we know this from history and precedent. That's what happens. So when we see a number as bad as this one, it is only a matter of time, unless anything else changes that would suddenly make people more cheerful. Look at that chart. I mean, just look at it. Unless people suddenly become more cheerful, why would this not translate into spending? You see, that consumer lab, the lab from Yale, that number of 4,700, that is providing you don't start substituting goods. In other words, pre-substitution, if we just continue as we are now. But of course, people will start to substitute. They will find other goods. And as the Christmas Tree Association said a moment or two ago, it's going to be very difficult to find substitution of many things that we currently get from China.
Yeah, you'll be surprised just how much we get exclusively from China. And Jim, I'm really curious to get your perspective on the White House's handling of this situation. Not so much the tariffs that have been announced, but this reporting that the White House, that officials have made clear to Beijing that they want Xi to ask for a call with Trump. Yeah. Trump hasn't reached out directly. What do you make of that approach?
And the White House saying they want Xi to reach out for it. Can you get any more high school in matters of state? It's ridiculous.
He's got to call me, Jim.
Yeah, and listen, what's interesting is, as I was reporting yesterday, the Chinese impression is that they are willing to at least negotiate, not necessarily on Donald Trump's terms, but to talk. But their impression is that the U.S. has not opened channels and not made an effort to open up channels to allow that. So now you have the U.S. president say, well, I'm not going to open those channels. China has to open them first. It's kind of ridiculous at the end of the day because you are playing with the interests of American consumers, Chinese consumers, et cetera. The other point I would make about China's reaction today in not quite meeting the U.S. tariffs, 145% U.S., China goes to 125. And in Xi's statement, he said,
I don't get it. Like, for all the oblivious America dick riders who think like America's really dominating right now, like what do they think is going on? Why is China not picking up the phone call? Why is China not picking up the phone and calling Donald Trump? Why has Donald Trump's attitude shifted over the course of this past week, where he went from China is panicking, they're so afraid, to why has China not called yet? Please call me. Also, why is the future of global trade and the economies of every single country at the whims of the selfish, narcissistic tendencies of a belligerent madman? It makes no sense. Another question here, of course, is for the media, because these guys aren't stupid, okay? They're not stupid. They know they don't like Donald Trump for many different reasons, but they especially don't like Trump right now. They don't like Trump for doing this belligerent thing and potentially hurting the stock market, creating too much instability, right? So if they recognize that, why are they still trying to make sense of what Donald Trump is doing? Is it that we just have like one speed in mainstream media where they like have to say there's reason behind the belligerent actions of a person who collapsed the American stock market for fun? It doesn't make any sense. Why are these guys not going, hey, dude, this is crazy? Why are they engaging immediately in sane washing Donald Trump?
As we're going to 125 in response. That's as high as we're going because this is getting a little ridiculous, right? And that's both a signal to say we're not going to get caught up in this tit for tat to the degree that the president is, but it's also an opening to say, okay, we're capping this for now, and that perhaps offers a way forward that we could begin talking about how to bring these down.
You've lived in China. Mm-hmm. You've covered China for some time now. As we're looking at this question of who's going to blink first, with two very different political systems, what is your gauge on this?
Well, different systems, listen, one's a democracy, one is not. One's a single-party state, very much not a democracy. But China does have politics, and Chinese leaders do not want to be seen, we were talking about this yesterday, I believe, do not want to be seen as capitulating to America. That is not...
Oh, it's just that they're pussy. Like they don't want to look like pussies. That's what it is. Well, if you set it up like this, then yeah, inevitably, when after the lesson, the hard lesson is taught to not America, because we're fucking too stupid and too belligerent and too hopped up on our own fumes of American imperial dominance to recognize that reality. But once the lesson to the European leaders have been taught, China, I think, will offer Trump an olive branch, a fig leaf, olive branch, whatever, something to make Trump feel like he got a W out of this. Because they also don't want complete market collapse. Okay? And when that happens, these guys will go, okay, we hate Donald Trump, but he did bravely and boldly lead us down the pathway of American prosperity. That's what I suspect. We'll offer him a fig leaf. I don't fucking know what the term is. Shut up. An olive branch. A concession. That's it. These journals move to China and use it as a token to promote the same talking points they always have. Anyway. I guess fig leaf works in that situation too, because the emperor is devoid of clothes, you know? The emperor is naked. So I do think that both an olive branch and a fig leaf works in that regard. If we were to push that analogy to its limits, I think a fig leaf would even be better in that regard. Because basically what's going on is the emperor has no clothes. He's running around with his little baby dick out. Okay? And people are realizing that he has no clothes. No one wants to tell him that he has no clothes. And eventually China will be like, here's a fig leaf. You can put it on your baby dick. After everybody sees that he has no fucking clothes. Anyway. That's what I think is going to happen.
Not good politics for a Chinese leader. Long colonial history to go back into, we could talk for hours, but they don't want to be seen as kowtowing to the West here. So
yeah, no, totally. That's what it is. I mean, that's just marketing, okay? That's optics. It's also somewhat irrelevant in this process because J.D. Vance called China peasants. So I think that gave all of the opportunity of the Chinese government to hold strong.
Browbeating is not a great.
You got the right answer with the wrong formula amount.
Strategy. And we've seen that in the past as well. Now, we should say Donald Trump mixes in with the tariff browbeating some comments about how good a friend he is with Xi. But we'll see if the door has been closed for now, or if there's a little bit of an opening and perhaps they start opening those channels.
Richard, it's interesting to explore the power that the EU has now, because they can tip the scales in terms of how impactful these tariffs will be for either nation, depending on where negotiations land.
So you've got the Spanish Prime Minister in Beijing. You've got the EU basically saying, well, we're going to start looking at other markets. I think this will most certainly give a huge boost to China-EU relations to try and complete some form of trade agreement, because everybody is now wanting to circumnavigate the United States. Now, you can't up to a point. There are certain things, there are certain inalienable bonds of trade between the EU and the US. That doesn't mean to say you can't reduce it, your reliance. And just as much as the US is now saying, we want to reduce our reliance on China, we want to make sure we are no longer strategically dependent, the EU absolutely is saying, is there a deal to be done with Brazil and Mercosur? Is there a deal to be done with ASEAN, a stronger one? Jim, can I just ask Jim, do you think, sorry guys, but do you think that the Xi statement is actually a sort of not a white flag, but just a sort of an olive branch that both sides can now take to move forward?
I think it has two sides to it. One, it's a bit of a message to the U.S. to say, this is silly. This is getting silly. We're not going to play this game of chicken. But Xi Jinping, also by not going right up to the level of U.S. tariffs, I think one can look at that as a small opening for discussions. Both of them want to talk. Now the question is, I suppose, who picks up the phone first? That's where we are.
You see, Boris, Brianna, that's what happens when you get two anchors who are also your guests. We'll just hijack.
All right, now to a Fox News alert.
All right, let's hear what let's see what the piglets are saying to learn what's not actually happening in this process, but it's still informative because this is what a big chunk of the country will repeat. Now that I've told you what is going on and what I suspect will happen and what the truth is, let's talk about how these guys are covering the same exact issue.
Or tensions, I should say. Trade tensions escalating overnight as Beijing announces a 125% tariff on U.S. imports. That's up from 84%. After the White House says tariffs on China are now at 145%.
So meanwhile, President Trump says he's very close to his first deal.
If you aren't able to reach the deals that you want to see at the end of the 90 days, will you put those higher tariffs in place, or will you extend?
Well, that's what would happen. I mean, if we can't make the deal that we want to make, or we have to make, or that's good for both parties, it's got to be good for both parties, and then we go back to where we were.
Go back to the numbers that you announced last week.
I think so.
Wouldn't extend the pause.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens.
Well, here to explain what those next 90 days will be like is U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Jameson, first off, your take on what we woke up to today, upping the retaliatory tariffs on America to over 100%. Your reaction?
Well, good morning. I would say that the Chinese reaction this morning is not terribly surprising, but certainly unfortunate. No one else has retaliated against these reciprocal tariffs yet. China got out ahead and decided to do it, and that's why they're in a different category than the rest at this point.
Jameson, I know you've already talked to some countries and you're planning on talking to some today. Can you tell our audience which ones?
Certainly. In fact, right after I'm done with this TV spot, I'm going to be speaking with my counterpart in Israel. Over the last 2 days, I had a long discussion with the Vietnamese. We're speaking with the Taiwanese later today as well. I have a full dance card.
Yeah. So I guess, Representative, a lot of questions, the big question on Americans' mind, they're on board when it comes to knowing that China is a threat and they steal a lot of stuff from us. Is there a plan to make up the difference for some of those businesses that are going to be hit hard by this trade war?
Well, certainly. And part of the reason we're doing negotiations is to achieve more fair and balanced and reciprocal trade with other nations. And part of this means opening up their export markets. As we all know, there have been so many barriers to U.S. products in foreign markets for many years, whether it's tariffs or non-tariff barriers or other things like that. And so as we're meeting with these countries every day, we're talking about ways where we can have more U.S. exports and give our producers alternative markets to China in addition to China.
All right, so when we look at China, tell me if these numbers line up with your numbers. We get 73% of our smartphones, 78% of our laptops, 87% of our video game consoles, 77% of our toys from China. If those numbers are correct, what do you? The marketplace is going to get severely hit by these tariffs.
So I understand that we do import a lot from China, and that actually, to me, underscores the urgency of the situation. We've become so dependent on this. That being said, many of our large companies dealing in hardware and consumer electronics have been diversifying over the past few years to Vietnam, to India, to Mexico, to Korea, to elsewhere. And those are the kind of trends we need to see to help diversify that production so that can help out American consumers and American companies.
But in the meantime, they say it's going to cost the American household $4,800. What do you say to those households?
Yeah, what do you say?
Well, first of all, I would say with respect to those projections, a lot of those are Wall Street analysts who have a lot to lose themselves. In the first term, we put a lot of tariffs on China, and we saw similar predictions. Those ended up being wrong. Inflation went down. I think the economic fundamentals of our country are still very, very good. And while there may be an adjustment, I think we're going to be on a good path, and I don't think we're going to see that level of increase in household expenses.
Yeah, I know a lot of countries are still at 10%. So many of those products maybe we can buy from other countries. What do the next 90 days look like?
Sure, I'm happy to give you some detail on this. So my office, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, I have hundreds of people. They're split up according to regional areas, and they're working around the clock with their counterparts at the staff level. And there are pieces of paper going back and forth as countries come in and make suggestions about what they can do to have more reciprocal trade with with us. And we're looking at those, we're reviewing those, we're communicating with them and giving them ideas so we can get to a point where the president can close these deals. He can negotiate, and if there's a deal that's good, he can consider taking it, and if not, then he'll have the tariff. But that's what we're doing over the next 90 days. We've been doing it for weeks, and we're doing it today, and we'll just keep doing it.
Mr. Representative, the president has said, keep calm, don't get yippy. You seem like a calm guy yourself, but what do you tell the American people that are on your side, on the president's side, but they are a little scared because they see everything in their house and they look at the label and it says made in China?
Yes, there's a story from a couple of years ago. One of my kids one day looked at me and said, "Dad, why does everything say made in China? They must be so busy over there." And they're exactly right. But again, this has been a bipartisan.
If China doesn't back down, how fucked is the U.S.? Unimaginably fucked. He just described to you all of the products that are made in China and did not tell you how that is going to, how all of that trade is going to be rerouted. Like there's no alternative. There is no plan. There is no alternative. There is no plan. It is insane. It is an insane move. Got me the world and the rest was made in China. It's
an
true.
Approach for the past almost 8 years at this point that we need to diversify from China and be able to source from other countries. And so I'm obviously sensitive to the needs of households and what we're seeing, but we've been.
Yeah, the only alternative is rerouting trade to secondary markets. Rerouting trade to secondary markets, which, guess what, is still going to make it more expensive. It's not going to be 125% more expensive, but it will still be, especially on top of the tariffs, There's additional logistics involved in this. Like it will make it, on top of the 10% global tariffs, it will literally be it will take more time, and it will be more costly on top of that. So you're still looking at a shit ton of inflation for no discernible reason.
Put in a position and a point of emergency, frankly, where if we can only maintain our standard of living by being dependent on China, who is a strategic adversary, that's a very dangerous position to be in. And so we need to accelerate this.
What did you learn from the phase one deal last time, which they didn't keep to, and it wasn't enforced? Does that make you worry about cutting any deal with China in the long run?
Well, my sense is that the Chinese are pragmatic. I learned to have a deep respect for them. They're very serious. They understand power and realpolitik in the international arena. When we did the phase one deal in the first couple of years, where the Trump administration was still there, we actually were able to enforce it. They bought more ag products from us in 2020 and then even 2021 than they had done in history. So it is a matter of enforcement. And I think if there's mutual understanding, mutual respect, and a real agreement, you can actually move the ball forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong at all. The difference in this circumstance is that Trump is behaving in an even more belligerent manner in his second term as opposed to his first term. It was a costly initiative but it was at least like directed at certain sectors. And therefore, you could at least like subsidize those sectors and try to make up for the loss of profit, make up for the loss of revenue. In this circumstance, it's impossible for America to make up for that. Do you see what I'm saying? They have created a new trade regime that makes it impossible for anyone to contend with. But I think I'll add one more thing. I'll add one more reason why I think China is like holding out. Because the more they hold out, the more instability happens, the more Trump loses out on his confidence to maintain this trade regime, this embargo, basically. So I think it lowers the stakes for China when they do come back and offer an olive branch. But this is why I suspect that China will offer an olive branch eventually.
Thank you so much for coming on this morning.
I don't think they're interested in destroying America and therefore destroying global trade across the board and just like rewriting global trade in general, resetting. What do you call it? Basically doing a great reset. Allowing Trump to hit the great reset button, ironically enough, because it's Trump doing this. It's not China.
You've had a busy week.
Right. Just exit question. Can you get 70 deals done in 90 days?
I think we can get enough deals done to the president so he can be comfortable that we're moving the ball forward, making trade more
Dude, even he's admitting it. It's just like, this is straight up about making the president feel good, dude. That's insane. That's insane. It has nothing to do with like fixing trade deficits or anything. It's just at this stage, it's straight up, we're at the mercy of a madman.
Reciprocal and pushing forward American prosperity.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative.
China escalating the ongoing trade war with the U.S.
Overnight, Beijing announcing a 125% tariff on U.S. imports. This is up from 84% duty that China announced on Wednesday.
So this has the White House clarified yesterday that the 20% fentanyl tariff will remain in effect, bringing the total tariff on China to 145%.
Yeah, we did some bad math early, but now this is the total.
China's finance ministry responding, saying, quote, even if the U.S. continues to impose higher tariffs, it will no longer make economic sense and will become a joke in the history of world economy.
All right, President Xi also saying today his country is not afraid. Their new 125% tariff rate on U.S. Goods kicks in tomorrow. And here we go. So no one's backing off.
No.
But the thing that obviously it's going to affect us. Got it. But when you realize how much China is hurting internally, their marketing, their housing market has collapsed. The stimulus money that they put in has not been effective. They have a youth unemployment rate where kids are going from college and they just don't want to work, not opportunities available, to the point where they're going back to the colleges saying, if your students, your graduates don't get jobs, we're coming after you. That's how desperate they are. And most of what they need now, since they're great at producing things, but they need us to consume their things. And if the prices become too high, America naturally will start giving the Heisman to Chinese goods.
I think this has become the national security issue of our time as well, Brian. They hack us like crazy. They steal like crazy. They knock off our products all the time. And you really can't compete at the end of the day with slave labor. We outlawed in this country for a reason, and now we essentially buy the products from a different country that does the same thing.
Right. We get a lot of computers, a lot of phones, a lot of toys from China. But the president says he's optimistic. This was good news. He said, we're very close to doing one of these trade deals. Listen.
So how close are you to the first country coming to actually make a deal with the United States over tariffs? Is it days, months?
Well, I think it's very close, but, we have to have a deal that we like. We don't want a deal that's...
Not only do we still have slave labor in our prison system, and it's legal, we also literally just signed a new deal with a slave labor colony in El Salvador to ship a bunch of people without any evidence of their criminal behavior whatsoever to said slave labor colony. It's fucking crazy.
It's going to be a bad deal, or I could make every deal in one day if I wanted to. I could do this all in one day. I could just say, here's what we'll do. And
yeah, this is, I already know what this is, okay? I know what he's going to say. Tim Apple here is going to say people misunderstand something about China. Even if China had wage parity with the United States of America, where the wage was the exact same for the labor, I would still manufacture my products in China because they have a runway, they have industrial runway, they have infrastructure. Their industry is far more advanced than the United States of America. This is a truth. I have heard Tim Apple say this before, and it is correct. A lot of people still operate with the old hat mentality. China has both the skill, the skilled labor force, and the education, and the infrastructure to handle all of the demand necessary for a company like Apple. America does not. The reason why Tim Apple would continue working with China is because of that reality. What people don't understand, or what people still think, is that China makes cheap commodities, cheap goods. They don't understand that the very same factory that will give you a $1 t-shirt is also capable of giving you a $200 t-shirt. The very same factory that can give you Temu is also capable of manufacturing iPhones. This is what Americans don't understand. They think everything cheap is made in China. It's just cheap Chinese goods. Affordable doesn't mean that the quality of the product is bad. In China, now, in the exact same factory, you can get the highest level of quality good if you choose to pay for it, or the lowest level of quality good if you choose to pay less for it. It's not fucking the early 2000s at this point. It's not the 90s at this point.
About China, and let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. The reason is because of the skill, the quantity of skill in one location, and the type of skill it is. Like the products we do require really advanced tooling, and the the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. You know, in the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep, very, very deep here. There's a confusion about China, and let me at least give you my...
Yeah. That took, for the record, that took decades to build, okay? That was our design, mind you, but that took decades to build. It's an important lesson to learn. If it took China decades to build, even though they were nowhere near as wealthy as the United States of America at the time, how long would it take for us to build without a command economy, with no free education? Think about that. Nobody thinks about how long it takes to build a factory and hire the skilled labor necessary to fill the factory floor. It's just thoughts and prayers, I guess. Everything in America is built around thoughts and prayers. We have the money, except the government never uses that money in that direction because of the private-public partnership that we have designed that does not work at the behest of citizens or at the behest of improving the material conditions of the working class, but instead works at the behest of profit. So we just don't have it. Real question, if you're such a fan of China, why do you choose to live in the U.S.? Oh, right, the whole freedom to be a millionaire by spreading propaganda thing you do well. I mean, this propaganda that I'm spreading about China, I could just as easily do in China. I'm pretty sure, you know. There are certain things I would not be allowed to say. That much is clear. Even though, as it stands, a lot of the things I'm saying here in the United States of America are becoming illegal right now in this very moment. Mahmoud Khalil comes to mind. Very confusing to me that someone who is a regular layman living in the United States of America is yelling at a person like me to be like, why don't you go back? Why don't you go to China to say this shit, dumbass? And it's like, I could do that. But I care about people here. I see the potential that America has. I want America to be better. I want America to do right by every single person in this chat, every single person in the United States of America, including dumb fucks like you, as a matter of fact, regardless of your stupid opinions. That's what I'm fighting for. Whether you recognize it or not doesn't matter.
That
I already covered this. Supreme Court partially allows lower court. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that as well. Shamath. All right, let's continue with this for now.
I was saying to the people before, to Scott, mostly to Scott and Howard, and some of the other people that work with us on the negotiations.
You wouldn't extend the pause?
No. We'll have to see what happens at that time.
And they're saying a lot of things. They're coming after it. Their foreign minister, the Chinese foreign minister, says the U.S. is in defiance of global criticism, pitching itself against the rest of the world. Intimidation, threats, and blackmail are not the right way to engage China. Now, people have said that President Xi has come to power, held power, consolidated power, because he's known as a tough guy.
Right.
So that's his whole persona. I know it comes down to schoolyard politics, and we usually use that, keep that in the Middle East. Right. But we're seeing that now. So if you want to keep your population in check, you make him think that you're in control, what he says goes, and you're going to stand up to the behemoth, which is the U.S., which makes me think they're not going to take a step back, because that is their persona right now around the globe.
But people are going to suffer. And I love the way that the president talks about this. He always says, look, I got to be tough with China. I have to, but me and the president are friends. He's a tough negotiator. I got to do what's best for my people. Mm-hmm. He's going to try to do what's best for his people. But all I want is fairness. I don't want to get into a war with China. Mm-hmm. I just want what's fair to the
this is also a correct take. What is funny is that neither China or you want the U.S. to lose, but the U.S. keeps trying to kill itself. It is in China's best interest not to collapse the global order, the global economy. China is doing all right in the current order of business. America, on the other hand, is like, I will fucking nuke the entire planet. I'm on the button. My finger's on the trigger. I will nuke the entire planet. It's crazy. And the irony here is that chatters like that one will be the ones who lose out even more than someone like myself in this process. Everybody wants to avoid this, except for seemingly Trump and his supporters. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. Like, Trump supporters are going to get fucked over by this, and they're just championing this death and destruction for seemingly no reason other than to soothe the narcissism of a madman.
the United States and what's fair for China as well.
Right. I don't think most Americans knew the deficit was so big between the two countries. And that's what he's saying. We're going to stop paying y'all so much money until you start paying us just as much. We have Jameson Greer, the U.S. trade representative. You've seen him on TV. Guest. Yeah, he's big. He's going to be on at 7:30. He's the one that's been in front of the Senate and the House talking about all this.
Very smart.
And the cabinet met yesterday, and the cabinet members started to share their latest developments. It goes hand in hand with what you saw yesterday at the diner. Everyone was saying, I love that President Trump's doing this and this and this. And if you don't remember everything that he's done over the last 100+ days.
Yeah, this is also an interesting point. They keep talking about how the Chinese people are suffering and neglect to recognize how this will very negatively impact Americans. It's wild. Yeah. These aren't people who care about like Chinese people and their prosperity. So why is it that they consistently talk about the suffering of the Chinese in this process and not the suffering of Americans? They're Americans. They've never actually cared about Chinese people and their well-being. So important to note, important to consider why they just don't talk about, why they don't talk about how Americans will suffer in this process. Because like, aside from Brian Kilmeade, who we know was in the tank for Ron DeSantis, I rarely ever hear any Fox News anchor talk about what this will do to fucking costs. CNN is interviewing a small business owner virtually every night. They're not doing more in terms of like workers that will inevitably be laid off. I think they should be covering that aspect of it. I think they should be covering the aspect of consumer confidence and what that will do to the working poor. They should be interviewing like regular people, doing a man on the street to be like, what do you think is going to happen when this thing that you consume, okay, is going to be 10 times more costly now? Like, how does that make you feel?
Days. Here you go.
Within the next 24 hours, you're going to be seeing another huge arrest on a Tesla dealership, President, and that person will be looking at least 20 years in prison with no negotiations.
For the second month in a row, you have broken the record in the history of the nation for the lowest number of encounters at the border.
We anticipate savings in FY26 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion. And I mean, and some of it is
cope, lies, awesome,
just absurd. Like people getting unemployment insurance who haven't been born yet.
I've had over 100 people working around the clock to scan the paper around RFK, Senator Robert F. Kennedy's assassination, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination.
By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
That's incredible. I said
Think about that last line.
It'll be 100 days on April 29th. That last line, we're going to figure out by September what has caused this autism epidemic. We'll be able to know or tell America by then.
Well, I mean, that's huge promises. No backing off that deadline. Right. One thing is, you know, they did update us. This is what President Trump wants to do. It's your government. I'm going to let you see what's happening. It went on for over an hour. There's no better programming in the country than when President Trump gets his cabinet members together or when he has these meetings, whether it's gun control or anything else. Bring the cameras in. You'll see it in real time. You bring the governors in. Leave the cameras on. Let the governors ask me questions. Same thing with
Right.
mayors.
The transparency in this administration is just unmatched. I mean, he wants the American public to see everything. And this is not a ceremonial cabinet. They're working, and they're telling the American people what they're doing. You can criticize them all day. You may not like them personally, whatever the Democrats want.
I can't deal with this. This is just so stupid.
China.
Trump's top trade advisor tells Mr. Xi to pick up the phone, come to the table. Okay.